Welcome to Under the Fig Tree podcast. In today's episode, hosts Reverend Micah Glenn and Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt sit down with a special guest as they meditate under the fig tree.
What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Under the Fig Tree. I am your host, Reverend Micah Glenn, and of course joined by my highly esteemed co-host, Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt. How are you, bro?
I'm good. I when you said Reverend Doctor, It reminded me of this episode or this little skit on SNL where they refer to the General Reginald Saunders, and it just, I don't know, the way you said it, my son will definitely appreciate that I shouted out to that SNL clip. Otherwise, our listeners have no idea what I'm talking about.
But I always feel like when I introduce you, I have to do it slightly variated every time. But today, we're joined by a highly esteemed guest, Reverend Alec Fisher. How are you, bro?
I'm doing all right. I'm not sure I'm highly esteemed, but I'm doing well.
Well, in this circle,
in most circles.
Yeah, I was going to say.
All right.
So Alec is a former classmate. We started seminary together. We did fall Greek together.
We did.
You didn't have to do Hebrew.
No.
So in undergraduate, was your undergraduate in Semitic studies or something slightly different?
My undergraduate at the University of Florida was Judaic studies. And so as a part of the program, we had to learn modern Hebrew.
Okay.
And I took 2 years and did an intensive course between those 2 years at Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
Okay.
And so before seminary, I was able to clean up a little bit of my biblical Hebrew and pass the competency exam and not have to take when I got here.
Guess it was probably just a matter of vocabulary. Hebrew is a great language. Oh, maybe not?
Well, I mean, there's some grammar differences
okay.
too. You know, the way that they deal with the tenses and all of that. So
there we go.
Yeah.
Alec is a language guy.
He is a language guy. Yeah. So I mean, we'll just get into a little bit of it because we were former classmates. You're now a pastor, and we'll ask you about that in a second. But me and Alec are both in graduate school.
Yes.
He's a little bit further along in graduate school than I am. I started a year ago. So
okay. Yeah. Then I am.
But he teaches online languages for the graduate school, German and Latin. And last year, Alec was my German professor.
Yeah. In class in a different way, Micah.
In a very different way. I always tell people, because classmates, they were like, what was it like to have Alec as a prof? And I was like, it's exactly the way you think it would be. And everybody's like, I think I know what you mean. I was like, exactly.
That's right.
Well, anyway, I won't get into all the different things, but Alec is a very sharp guy. And so it was one of those things where, like, you're in graduate school, there's a little bit of adulthood to learning a language for graduate school. But German, some people are going to struggle with any foreign language because they make it more difficult than it needs to be.
Yes.
But German is, like, if you're an English speaker, German is very easy to learn.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Micah. That's one of the goals of the class. Yeah.
Well, you kept saying it, and we would always try to break rules in class for German. You'd be like, German never breaks its language rules. And once you accept that, it's so
Not
easy.
ever.
Yeah. They don't like to do that. Yeah.
You know what's interesting about this this triangle is that I was Alec's professor. Mm-hmm. So now I'm feeling old because I had him for pastoral leadership back in the day in the old curriculum before we changed things up. But yeah, you were in actually probably one of the first sections of pastoral leadership that I ever used the reframing organization stuff. And I remember you talking about it after you got out into the parish.
That was a very useful book. It still is. Yeah.
I'm still using it. I'm actually teaching it right now in a course on leading by preaching. We just covered the frames last week.
Yeah. Yeah, those 4 frames, they've been very helpful practically because it helps you get a sense of what's going on around you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
How to tackle different things going on, and but Ben, that means you're more esteemed than I am. See,
older.
Well,
that's what that means.
So if you're listening to us, what we didn't mention at the beginning is that we now have a video on YouTube on CSL Concordia Seminary St. Louis's YouTube page, so you can see what Ben looks like these days. What was the point of me bringing up the YouTube? If you're listening, you can now watch us. What was your last comment?
Oh, I don't know. Ben's more esteemed, and now you can actually see what he looks like.
There we go. Connecting the dots.
He was just going to point out how old I look.
No.
That's what it was.
In order of esteemed, it's esteemed, a little less esteemed than me.
Oh,
yeah, it's all right. Oh, it's all right. One day,
we know you
don't
really believe that.
One day, I might be as esteemed, or maybe even more esteemed than you guys. But listen, I know my place in the world, and I'm actually very comfortable where I am.
As the host, Ben, as the host.
Well, when you ask somebody to do the introduction, they get to do it the way they want to.
So now I work for him.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In our last episode, the two of us, we talked a little bit about, Micah and I talked a little bit about our some of the projects that we're working on. Micah talked a little bit about some of the courses he's taken. So you're in a Ph.D. program as well, and you're actually in the same. I don't know that I've ever talked about my dissertation on the podcast, but today is not the day for that.
Well,
but
it's a good time to talk a little bit about that, though, Ben.
Yeah, maybe with the one other person in the world that knows something about what I wrote about. But tell us a little bit about your program, who your doctor father is, and kind of what you're working on.
Okay. Well, my program is the same as your program, right? So I've got in the same program at the University of Birmingham that Ben was in.
Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, UK, across the pond.
The other one.
The other one. Birmingham, right?
Brahmi.
And so this is a program centered around textual studies, manuscript studies, and I'm currently doing research on a bilingual manuscript, so a 9th century manuscript of Paul's letters that's written in Latin and in Greek. But what's so peculiar about this manuscript is that it's got a Greek text, but an interlinear Latin text. So there's Greek.
What does interlinear mean for our listeners that may not know that term?
So it's written in Greek, but it's also written in Latin between the Greek lines, right? So, and this is it's just an interesting text in and of itself. And so the question is, what do these texts, do the Greek and Latin forms affect each other? There's quite a bit of grammar, right, involved in this, and trying to figure out what exactly the scribe was up to in creating this manuscript. So that's where my research is. Manuscript studies. Yeah,
and I like the Bible too, so I also studied textual studies, and I used F and G, two. F and G. It's not a bad reference or anything like that. It's two letters of Greek manuscripts, right? That or Latin.
Well, they're bilingual.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But they were useful for me in my dissertation writing as well. Yeah. So what's the point of if somebody is just kind of entering into this conversation, wants to maybe study theology, and they hear somebody talking about textual studies? I would think in my mind, like, what's the practical payoff? Like, why should somebody that wants to be a pastor or somebody that is a pastor, why study manuscripts and text? Isn't the don't we just have a Greek New Testament that we can trust 100%?
Yeah, well, I mean, the answer is yes. We've got a Greek New Testament that we can trust. It's the inspired Word of God. But people don't realize how much goes into creating a critical edition like that. I mean, Christians like to brag about how many thousands of manuscripts we have of the New Testament. It's like, well, yeah, and so somebody's got to kind of transcribe them from, written on a, written on a, papyrus, or it's got to be transcribed and digitized, and then compared, collated, and then you eventually come out with this critical edition that's then used for translation purposes. So there's a huge process. I don't know how many hours over how many centuries people have spent working on the New Testament text, but there's so much work behind it, so many people behind it, and eventually you just receive it as a ESV, NIV, NRSV, English Bible or something, or in any other language. Yeah. Right? So,
what would you say to somebody that said, Pastor, come on, surely it's not that complicated, isn't kind of close enough, good enough? don't we basically have the Bible?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to say that any manuscript that we're dealing with, we have to recognize that that manuscript, even with scribal mistakes, that is functioning as the Word of God for a community or communities, right? So the Spirit is still at work, and when we're reading that, or when they were reading it 1,000 years ago. Right. So that, first of all, that's a really important thing.
Because that was the only version they had. They couldn't go down to Amazon and get the authorized version or the real version or the one without mistakes, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so the Holy Spirit's still very much at work in that. And so what we've got a conglomeration of these manuscripts. So bringing them all together to do the best that we can do to figure out the textual variants, right? And if it's the Word of God, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right? It's worth the time. It's worth the effort. And the church has always held that it's worth that, which is why the church has been producing manuscripts for, thousands of years.
Yeah, that's actually what got me really excited about studying with Hugh Haupt, our mutual doctor father. He said on the website that advertises the program that sometimes people call this textual criticism, which sounds like I'm going to be critical of the Bible. And sometimes, let's be honest, there are textual critics who study the text of the Bible in order to point out how they think the Bible is not the Word of God.
Yeah.
And Hugh actually says on his website that he likes the term textual studies more because I know that personally he has a very high regard for the text of the Scriptures, and he's studying it because it's such an important text.
Well, and he's the executive editor for the Pauline Epistles for the International Greek New Testament Project. So just to think about, who's working on this stuff, people that care very much about the text and take it very, very seriously, which again, that's why we're willing to spend hours upon hours upon hours looking at every single letter of a manuscript and comparing it to every single letter of another manuscript and of another manuscript and another manuscript, right? I mean, it's painstaking work. And I've
spent 4 years collecting citations from Tertullian's writings of 3,500 citations from Acts through the Apocalypse or Revelation.
Well, and this is something that people don't realize. So I'm working on a bilingual manuscript, again, Pauline Epistles. But Ben, you worked on the writings or the citations of a church father, Tertullian.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be harvested then also. And the church fathers who are writing about the text and quoting the text and referencing the text.
Hearing their thoughts about the text, the way they understand it.
And they didn't always, they never used quotation marks. They didn't footnote. They had no kind of regularized way for saying this is a quotation versus this is just kind of my kind of paraphrasing restatement of the text, like we all do in preaching, right? Sometimes we'll restate the text and we'll change a few words to kind of put in our own words, not to change the text of Scripture, but to make one essential point that we're trying to make. So, trying to sort through all that in Tertullian. What was fun was noticing that sometimes when Tertullian was living from, 160 to about 220, give or take, because we don't have his grave marker or anything like that either. But so really, really early, right? 150 years after the resurrection and ascension. And he's quoting passages from the New Testament that are not the same way in our Latin New Testament or our Greek New Testament today. And so some people would say maybe Tertullian was just wrong. Some people like to point out that Tertullian was a heretic. He was a Montanist. These are like these little things that you pick up in a book. Tertullian was a Montanist, therefore we can't trust anything that he says. Well, he was really a lot more complicated than that. We would not have a lot of our small catechism, I happen to think, if Tertullian hadn't gone about and written a lot of the things he did about the Lord's Prayer and about baptism. a lot of our small catechism just sounds like Tertullian. So there's a lot of good stuff that he has to say. But he quotes the Bible in some different ways than what some of the even early manuscripts do. And so sometimes I was arguing that Tertullian was actually maybe had the better text.
Yes, his citation preserves the
maybe the original reading that Paul text, wrote, or that Peter wrote, or
right.
Yeah.
So Alec, I want to get your opinion on this because I don't know if we've ever talked about on an episode before. We talked about graduate studies before. So if you come to the seminary in diaconal formation, or even in our other programs, even if you do the alternate route program or the Master of Divinity program, you're getting a degree beyond an advanced degree, right? But we don't consider our Master of Divinity. It's not an academic degree, although
it's a vocational degree,
but we have a high academic mark even for our vocational degrees, and that was my point. So we all, three of us, Masters of Divinity, all called, rostered, ordained pastors in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and you've accomplished a Ph.D. in academia. We're both pursuing it.
Yes.
So, and it's not for everybody, but what would you say is the importance of at least some, if not like more than some, of pastors in the church pursue academia beyond what's required of being a pastor?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important, especially today, because people are looking, to say it bluntly, people are looking for pastors to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it's easy for us to come off as if we don't. We're in an age where it's good information can be hard to come by, and a time where it's difficult to trust that people actually have an idea of what they're actually saying, right? And so I think it's really important, because once you do that as a pastor, and you go and you take you enter in one of these programs, you're gonna do some coursework. Although Ben and I didn't do coursework for ours are research degrees, right? But here you do some coursework. You'll probably take some exams. Okay. And you will get a better understanding of something that's a little bit more specific, and you will increase your competency in something that's a little bit more specific. Whether it's something to do with doctrine, or textual studies, or exegesis, just reading the Bible, and the skills, I think. So it's a matter of actually learning a little bit more about a subject area, but also practicing a skill set and honing in on a certain skill set of being able to critically think further, and also critically digest a certain academic conversation, or just a conversation about the Bible, and respond in a way that is appropriate and competent and helpful. Right? It's something that as pastors we're trained to do, but going back and doing another degree is just, I think, is another level of that same kind of thing.
They say that it takes 10,000 hours, right, to become an expert. Isn't that what they say?
It could be.
Isn't that in that Macklemore song?
Yep. I don't know, guys.
So, mastering a subject. Dr. Ben masters a subject.
All right, that fell flat.
So I get asked that question a lot. Well, you have a master's degree. Yeah. Why do you want a Ph.D.? Yeah. And there's obvious answers. And I said this last time. Reverend Dr. Micah Glenn just rolls off the tongue. We get slightly different regalia. I don't know if you looked at Birmingham's regalia.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Oh, it's majestic.
There we go.
Micah.
That's one way of
What
describing
are your thoughts about it?
So I have a high respect for the English style of regalia.
The cape.
Because we have some other faculty members that got their degrees from Cambridge.
Cambridge's colors are black and red.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
Yeah, very nice.
A real, like, bright red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Birmingham's, well, so I have this regalia. I wear this.
Is it maroon?
At least twice a year.
Scarlet?
Yeah, it's kind of scarlet, maybe maroon, red velvet.
And green?
And like a, kind of not even a forest green. Maybe it's a little more, well, it's probably pretty close to the greenery back here.
You stand out.
So yeah, I stand out. It very much looks like I could be working at a shopping mall, like in the line for going to see Santa Claus, right? Yeah.
I mean, but the importance of it is it's distinguished.
Yeah,
sure.
But then it always comes back to like, oh, do you want to be a teacher? And I'm like, well, I like to teach, and if that becomes a part of my path down the road beyond getting my Ph.D., that's fine. But it really just came down to being a better theologian.
Yeah.
And wanting that first.
Well, and also I think what it allows you to do is also it can open up avenues for further contributions to your field.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that's underappreciated. It's like, well, you have entered into this this realm of academia. And you've been trained a certain way to contribute, so make contributions. So even if you were, didn't take on a teaching position, well, now you've got a place, you've got a certain skill set, you've got resources, you've got people that you're in conversation with, and now you can make good contributions to the conversation. And I think we need more people that are willing to do that, not just in our own circles here,
right.
but just for the world, the wider church, like contributions we can make.
Another angle that I think is really interesting to think about, and I want to kind of explore with you a little bit, is this idea. So you're a parish pastor.
Yes.
You're pastoring week in, week out. You're preaching regularly, right? So what is it like, and how is it maybe helpful? I know as a parish pastor, I mean, there's sometimes I wasn't going to just have a sermon on Tertullian or something.
You don't want to do a series on Tertullian and Montanism?
Probably not. But on the other hand, there were lots of times where something that I had picked up in class or something that I had a good enough understanding from my Ph.D. studies, I did actually a class on how we got the Bible.
Okay.
And the laity loved it.
Yeah,
and they were like, please give us more than just kind of watered down, boring. We've heard this a million times before. This is the same stuff that we learned in Sunday school when we were 5 years old.
Yep.
So how do you bring these two worlds together?
Oh gosh.
In the parish.
Well, I try to do it as much as I possibly can. For one.
Yeah.
I think that we recently divided our Bible studies, our Sunday morning Bible studies, into two. We changed. So I was teaching the one, and then we split it up, and we have kind of like a small group, life group Bible study that meets, that talks about life, issues, right? What is it like living as a Christian in the world? And then the other one that I teach it's now called the Advanced Biblical Studies group. Okay, and so you show up, and you can go to the small group and be in conversation with people about living life as a Christian, based on biblical texts, right? Or you can go to the Advanced Biblical Studies group, and right now we're just diving into Genesis and diving, deeply into these biblical texts and talk in a way that maybe they've never heard people talk about these texts before, right? Yeah. And it gets people excited. They get all jazzed up about it, I think. Sometimes it goes over people's heads,
sure,
but that's the, when you're teaching a class, though, you kind of have
at the seminary too,
that's
right?
But no, I think it's exciting for people because when you kind of get the sense that, all right, if Bible study is, been there, done that, then, that doesn't facilitate reading the Bible. It doesn't facilitate excitement over the Bible. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But if you can bring them something and show them how much there actually is going on in these texts, and there is a lot going on in these texts, people get excited about something that they've kind of known their whole life, but never in this way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? And so I'm always trying to integrate, biblical studies with what's going on in the parish in that way.
And we're really blessed with an educated laity. 500 years ago, what you're describing, your advanced Bible class, probably wasn't possible because most people couldn't read. But I mean, we have people in our pews without degrees, but are well read, that understand things, know how to get information. Maybe they have an advanced degree, so they just have the ability, not always to track with it the way we're tracking with it, because this is what we are doing every single day. And yet, if you're good enough as a teacher anyway, you can bring them along with you, and like you said, you can unlock. It's always comes down to nuance. Like it's the same thing in the seminary. You take these classes over and over, and you read the Bible over and over, and it's not that it gets boring, but without like that extra added nuance of knowing Greek or knowing Hebrew, of being taught what the apparatus is doing in the Nestle Island, and so on, all these little nuances that unlock something new for you. It just becomes so much more engaging, and by virtue of how we're created, becomes a deeper part of our lives.
Oh yeah.
And so it's the same thing. I had pneumatology last spring with Leo Sanchez, which is the fancy way of saying we studied the Holy Spirit a whole lot.
Right.
And then I accepted a call, a part-time call, a church just north of here, and it was a plant, and we decided to do a series on Acts and the formation of the church. Well, that pneumatology course.
Oh yeah.
They don't know how much they benefited from it, but they benefited deeply from this just fresh idea that was already brewing in my brain, and then I got an opportunity to vomit on them a little bit, but they all really appreciated it. Like they would ask these questions, and I always say, well, do you want the 2-minute answer, or do you want the I'm currently in graduate school answer?
Right. That's right.
Great question. Right. Great question.
Because I can give it to you either way, and they usually want just give me the you're in graduate school, and I always stop.
That's right.
Are you tracking, or is it making sense? And people appreciate that.
Yeah, well, from our congregational standpoint, as far as like the let's say congregational budgeting goes, you all know how that goes, right? And my continued education budget, they see as like it's an investment.
Yeah, hey,
right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it is, right? It's an investment into. They know that the more I get out of my own continued education, they're going to get something out of this, right? Yeah. And that's the goal.
I think it's also comforting. I remember reading C.S. Lewis a number of years ago, and reading his account of his conversion to Christianity. And one of the things that he was comforted by was there. And he's an Oxford Don. He's teaching at Oxford, right? And he says something along the lines. It's been years since I've read it, but it was something along the lines of I was comforted by the fact that smarter people than me believe in Jesus Christ and take the Bible seriously. There's a certain comfort in that, like, the waters that I'm diving into are deep enough for me to really swim in, and that this isn't really just kind of fly by the night, shallow. I mean, we have plenty of that in our media saturated world, right? Shallows. But Christianity is not that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we'll just look at, you just go into a library, just go into this library and see, the stacks and stacks and stacks of books, how the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pages that people have written over the centuries. About really, I mean, either directly or indirectly about Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, this. I think of my own book collection. Right. I mean, somebody wrote all of that.
And Jesus is probably worth writing about.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And those books, they're good books.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like it's just, again, what you're saying. It's not like it's just shallow, writing. I mean, this is. There's so much thought that's been put behind this, and so much digging that people have done that, I mean, it's so rich. Yeah. I mean, the church is blessed with so much rich theological resources that ultimately, comes down to Jesus and reading the Bible.
Yeah. Alec, let's walk back a second, because something that we like to do on our guest, a question that we like to ask our guest is, so again, you're a pastor. Mm-hmm. What was your path? What way did you take to become Reverend Alec Fisher?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I grew up in Florida, from Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
All right, and
swamp water.
Well, we're at the beach. Grew up in an island. All right. Tampa Bay, and not a lot of Lutherans in the area. Right. Yeah, Ben, you know this, right? So not a lot of Lutherans in that area, and I actually had one of my classmates once asked me if being a Lutheran meant I followed Martin Luther King Jr. And I said, well, no, I don't. I don't know that there's a denomination named after Martin Luther King. But that was her only frame of reference.
Yeah,
no idea who Martin Luther was.
But Martin Luther King was named after
Martin Luther. I know, that's
what's
so funny about it, right? So again, like talk about Lutherans. Nobody knew what a Lutheran was, but we were Lutheran and grew up in our Lutheran church. Went to a parochial school, Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Tampa, and Dan Prue's the pastor there now.
Yeah,
and so grew up. It was some of the best education I ever got. Still to this day, I mean, that was so powerful for me. The lessons I learned, we learned about the Bible. We learned about the Reformation. We learned that Jesus is at the center of our lives, right? And then I went to a public school, for middle school and high school, but continued to go to my church. Got confirmed. After confirmation, I started going with my friends to a Baptist youth group.
Sure.
Okay. And it was there that, I mean, they dug into the text in a way that I'd never seen. Yep. Right. So I started hanging out with them more. Right. And I was kind of like the Lutheran amongst Baptists, right? And that's how they kind of referred to me. I was the Lutheran, right? Sure. And so now they at least knew what a Lutheran was, right? But we talked about the Bible. We had had a small group. Went to Monday night was small group night. Wednesday night was youth group night. And we played a game called Bible Trivia.
Oh, sure.
Okay, with the rainbow, have to work your way up the rainbow, and every color had a different themes, either Old Testament or wisdom literature or prophecy or New Testament.
Was this a Trivial Pursuit version, or was this a different?
I've never played Trivial Pursuit.
Oh. You've never played Trivial Pursuit?
Haven't.
Have you ever played Trivial Pursuit?
I love Trivial Pursuit.
I was thinking,
it's blowing my mind right now. Of all the people in the world that have never played Trivial Pursuit, like Alec, I feel like you would smash it.
Oh, I don't know.
I wasn't sure. I could foresee Micah saying Trivial Pursuit. No. That's for boomers.
It's such a great game.
It is a great game.
Well, all right. So I don't know. Do you answer questions and move up?
Yeah, but they're topical. So there's history. There's literature.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what this is like. Okay. So this is all I know.
All right.
So we got to a point though where there was a group of us. We read the Bible together regularly, and I became obsessed with the Bible. I'll never forget one of our youth group leaders. This is what did it for me. Okay, one of our youth group leaders said, "Hey, Alec, there's an exhibit in St. Pete. Now I grew up in Tampa. There's an exhibit in St. Pete. It's a Dead Sea Scrolls exhibit. Okay." And I forgot the name of it, but I actually looked it up not that long ago, and I, of course, recognize the people who were putting this on.
Right.
And I went to this lecture when I was 17 years old. I went to this lecture about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I was just fascinated. I had never seen anything like that before. I'd never heard of anything like that before. I was just fascinated. And I remember asking, what translation of the Bible should I read? right? It's the question that people ask me today, right?
Sure.
So what translation of the Bible should I read? And you know what he told me? He said, well, he was a Textus Receptus guy, okay? So not big on modern
we'll talk
manuscript
about
studies.
Textus Receptus on another episode.
Yeah. And he said, due to copyright and all these other things, he said the best one you could read is the New King James Version of the Bible. And I said,
the New King James. He
Yeah,
was
he
okay
told me
with the New King James.
Yeah.
That's kind of progressive.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
So I went out,
Andy.
I got my NKJV, and I just started reading it. I got sick for like 2 weeks, okay? I sat there, I just read through the Bible. And then I finished it, and I said, I'm going to read another translation. And I read through that, and I just kept going, translation from translation to translation. So playing Bible trivia, we got to the point where it was one of the youth leaders and I, this is a different youth leader than the one that took me to the exhibit, but also still a close friend today. We would, there were like 7 levels on the card, and you pick up a card, you do a level, you pass it, pick up another. In order to get to the next level, you had to answer all 7 questions right.
Yes.
All right.
And that's where we were at doing that. Okay. Now, 17 years old, just that's what I did.
Yeah.
Right. So I knew I was going to go into biblical studies. I had growing up in Tampa and going to public high school there. It's like there were only a handful of schools that you applied to, right? Actually, I applied to 2, Florida State University and University of Florida. And
both good schools.
Well, I got into both, so I went to University of Florida, naturally. That's right.
Sorry. We probably have some FSU listeners, so at least I hope that we do.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I really
Well, it's
like
okay.
Their pastor.
Me and
there.
It's
Ben,
okay, yeah. It's
we
okay.
like FSU.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Look, it's
Except
fine. I
for
don't
when
hold that
they're playing
against you.
Notre Dame.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't hold that against you. It's okay.
UF never plays Notre Dame, so.
Yeah, right. So I went to University of Florida, and they had a Judaic Studies program there. Now, when I went for orientation, I said that they ask you, do you know what you want to major in? Do you know what you want to do? And I said yes. I said I want to major in Judaic Studies. And the guy who was my supervisor for my orientation said, that's not a thing here. And I said, yes, it is. And
did you tell him the prof that? The head of that program was really a famous guy, right?
It was Jack Kugelmoss at the time.
Okay.
And he was an anthropologist, and the guy that I was talking to was an anthropologist also. And so he talked to him, and he said, oh, yeah, there it is. It's privately funded, okay? And there were, I think, 4 of us at the time that were Judaic Studies majors. As a part of the Judaic Studies program, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get a good sense of, first century Judaism, because I wanted to study the New Testament. Now, what I ended up getting was actually everything but that. I studied Rabbinic Judaism. I studied the Hebrew Bible as literature.
Which is like 2nd, 3rd century, right?
2nd through the 7th century is Rabbinic Judaism. I studied the Hebrew Bible as literature, which was fascinating.
Like Robert Alter kind of
Yeah.
stuff?
Oh, yeah. Robert Alter did a lot of Robert Alter. A lot of stuff that was in a class, in those kinds of classes, challenged a lot of people in their faith. I took it as an opportunity, as like a sparring moment, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, it was I learned quite a bit. In fact, one of my professors there that I took a lot of classes with, we did an independent study on biblical Hebrew, right? Yeah. So I did a lot with that. I studied church history. Some medieval archaeology, history of the Iberian Peninsula, so modern day Spain and Portugal. Right. And I didn't, in my mind, it was I'm gonna learn as much as I can about this stuff, and I did. And however, the manuscript thing never really came up again. There was no place for it. While I was doing this, so my thought was that I wanted to study historical theology. That's what I was going to do. I was going to apply to a graduate school and then go off to a Ph.D. program and be educated, I don't know, University of Chicago or something like that. That was what was in my mind. My pastors, when I started going to college, one of my youth leaders said, Alec, you really should, because I kind of stopped going to a Lutheran church by then. Right? And he said, you should go back to an LCMS church. So I listened to him because we had a really good relationship, and he was a Reformed Baptist, and so I did. And the pastors there were phenomenal. And they really inspired me. And they said, Alec, you ever think about going to seminary? And I said, no, not really. There was a moment when I was in my youth group where the youth leaders invited us to talk about possibly going into church work. And so I took them up on that, and we talked about that. But I didn't want to be a pastor. And so in the midst of all that, we had a very large campus ministry at the University of Florida, right, at First Lutheran Church there. And so I started getting very involved in the campus ministry. I started, we did a trip, I think we did like a trip to Panama, a few trips to Panama, a trip to Guatemala with the campus ministry. And then on top of that, or alongside of that, I was going out of the country every summer, right? So my first year, after my first year of college and the first summer there, as a part of the Judaic Studies program, since there was all this funding but not a lot of students, they said, hey, do you want to do a modern Hebrew immersion program? And I said, sure. So they sent me to Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I stayed there for 6 weeks, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 5 weeks in the program doing modern Hebrew immersion class. And of course, traveling all over the place, all over Jerusalem, all over the surrounding areas. The next summer, I signed up with LCMS World Mission, and I ended up in Uganda, and I spent 3 months in Uganda. And the missionaries there were fantastic. They learned a lot about missiology, and they would send me out with students that were learning to be pastors, and I'd stay out with them in their villages. One, I stayed 6 miles from the nearest paved road. Nice. Right? And it was just, it was a phenomenal experience, right? But see, at that time, I was spending time with guys that were learning to be pastors. And that had an effect on me. So I had my pastors back home saying, hey, you should think about going to seminary. Then I had, going to, across the Atlantic Ocean, right? And then these pastors that I loved talking to them and seeing what they were doing in the ministry there. And so I got more and more involved with the campus ministry. And the next summer I ended up going to Panama for a summer and spending time with the Panamanian Lutheran Church, and which was a blast for 3 months, and stayed with an all Spanish-speaking family, right? And so I learned a little bit of Spanish there, and which is ironic because I failed 4th grade Spanish at my Lutheran school, and so all this time, all these different things kind of having an effect on me. But I'm putting myself in places, more and more to see, is there something to this? Ended up, leading Bible studies in my campus ministry. We had a pretty large campus ministry, so I ended up being president of the campus ministry my last year, and it was a blast, and by the time it was, I was finishing up with college, it was, what are you going to do after this? It's like, well, I'm going to seminary. Like, there's no question. There was no question at that point. And I didn't, again, being a Tampa, Florida Lutheran, I didn't know anything about any of the, the system that we've got. I didn't know that Concordias existed.
Sure.
Okay. I didn't know that Concordia's seminary in St. Louis and Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne existed, right? And I ended up, after looking into it a little bit, ended up coming here, Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. And then after a couple of years of my studies here, which I enjoyed thoroughly, was a great place to ask questions and talk to professors and talk to students, and was exciting. I took advantage of the exchange program here, went to Germany for a year, and while I was there, I just got married to my wife, Rachel, and we went, and while we were there, I heard a lecture from one of our faculty members here on textual criticism on the New Testament. Yep. And when I heard that was it.
I meant to be there. Yeah. So when you were at Oberrussel, I was at Westfield House.
Yeah.
And we got invited to come, but it was right around the time that our oldest was going to be born, and I just couldn't leave my 9 months pregnant wife.
Well, it's a good move, Micah.
And go to Germany just in case.
I would also add just a little bit about Alec's path through the seminary, that he was also a faithful and devoted and very smart member of the Concordia Wine Society.
Oh, yes.
Which was just a life-changing, experience.
Well, it's a big part of my formation, Ben.
No, I was actually very glad to have you along, and we had just so many conversations.
That was
a glass of wine.
Y'all still doing that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a blast.
I told Dorothy that she should go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wasted on me, as everybody knows from the last episode. I enjoy a good glass. And there's actually, I went once or twice to a tasting that I think you and maybe Jeff Clower or Dr. Veltz put on.
Yeah.
And there were some wines that I had heard about old world wines and things like that, but I had never had one.
Yeah.
But then I had one. I was like, oh, this is nice. So I can appreciate.
We have some people that just taste and they spit everything out into the dump bucket. And the first time that I was in Bordeaux and saw people spitting out Mouton Rothschild into the dump buckets.
Did it hurt a little bit?
I was like, what are they doing? Like, how offensive. I mean, this is some of the most expensive, best wine in the world, right? One of the 5 top growths in Bordeaux. But that's just kind of what they do in France.
Well, they can afford it, and so they know how to enjoy it.
I was an American, and I was like, baby, I'm not spitting that out. I'll take I was also a poor student, so this was like, it costs $100, $200 a bottle probably at that point.
Sure. Well, this is something else that we have in common, Ben. So Ben and I went to the same Ph.D. program that I'm going through now, but we also both went to Oberursel to study for the exchange program. Yep. Also for STM, we had Jeff Glow as our advisor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, we took the same
path. Same
path. But again, from different positions in different places in the world. I mean, it's one of those things. So I did my vicarage in Huntsville, Alabama. So that's the South. And it was this thing. So like right up the street from the congregation I was a vicar at, there was a big Baptist church, and there were a big Baptist church everywhere else. But it was the same thing. And like, oh, you're a pastor. Which church? And you'd be like, oh, this Lutheran church. I'm like, what's Lutheran? I'm like, it's still very much one of those things. So not to just come up in this rough, denominational society and to the seminary, but it is one of those things. Again, we're like down on the coast, especially in the Gulf. You're kind of away from the motherland of the LCMS in the Midwest. So again, no knowledge of the Concordia systems of our seminaries. Even here, I grew up in St. Louis, and I didn't learn about Concordia Theological Seminary until I went to Concordia Chicago. Yeah. And so it's just one of those things, talking about the Holy Spirit and how he works when and where he wills, to call people into ministry. I mean, what a blessing to the church, because again, another harvester for the harvest fields, but again, somebody who's taking it steps further for the sake of our church, but the church at large, this desire. Because again, I enjoy graduate studies. Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, if you're going to do it, if you're going to go beyond the MDiv, you have to actually really like to study. Oh, yeah. And you have to really like to nerd out. Otherwise, it's going to be torture every single day. But that joy turning into something to benefit us in the conversation of the church today, right, is just as the director of recruitment, thinking about more and more students coming into the seminary, I celebrate that because it's just wonderful, because it's just a demonstration that, again, I love preaching and teaching. I love caring for people. Yeah. But I also love doing this. I also love graduate school. So it's one of these things, the dynamics of, I don't know if it was true for you, but when I was a kid, it's not that I didn't like my pastors. I just didn't know what they did. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I didn't really know who they were as human beings. You know what I mean? Yeah. There was this there was a chasm between me and them. And when somebody first asked me, I was like, I don't think I fit the bill of being a pastor in the LCMS. And again, here I am. So I think that's wonderful.
So I'm interested in jumping to this new segment that we've been doing on the podcast called "Ripe for the Pickin' or Leave It on the Tree."
Leave it on the tree.
So I wore some special socks today, and if you're a viewer, maybe you can see these on camera. I wore my Bitcoin socks today. So, Alec, your first ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree is cryptocurrency.
I'll leave it on the tree.
Oh,
I got time for that.
See here,
oh man, I thought for sure that you'd be like, yeah, actually, because you're a techie guy. I mean, you run your own podcast, right?
Yeah,
You have lots of
teaching online classes.
Yeah, you teach online classes, and you have like this phenomenal setup.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, oh, surely if anybody's into cryptocurrency, maybe it's Alec Fisher.
I don't have time for that.
Dang.
well, not only so this, and let's just stick with the big one, Bitcoin, right? So if you were insightful enough, right, to take the guy up on his offer who was giving them away a long time ago to get people interested in, or where you were one of these crazy people at the time and say you bought 1,000 when they were $1, right?
Yeah.
Well, fine, you're a genius.
I didn't do that.
Right.
But buying a Bitcoin today, and they just seem so volatile because they're not regulated. And then you have all these meme coins, and then you have all these scam coins. It's hard to. I love the idea of it. Yep. And again, I remember when Bitcoin was $1 and thinking, there's no way, because I was a poor seminary student, I wasn't going to waste $1,000.
Right.
For goodness sakes. but it like, I feel like it only benefits people who got into it a long time ago.
It benefits. I think it benefits people that just buy and hold for a really long time.
Okay.
So, I will be happy to admit that I own cryptocurrency.
Well, clearly, Ben. Clearly,
I'm deep in. I really am. But I've always paid taxes on my cryptocurrency.
There you
So
go.
the IRS, you know that I filed all my statements. I've been totally above board. I totally disagree with meme coins. I think they're ridiculous. It's silly stuff for the Gen Z, and I guess I just don't understand memes. That probably makes me old.
That's fine.
But I'm interested in the technology, and I hope that someday we are on a Bitcoin standard.
oh wow!
That-
Wow, that's
I mean,
all right.
I don't think, because again, just and maybe this is the old traditionist in me, like, you're never gonna get like rid of gold, right?
No, it's just that it'll be priced in Bitcoin.
Okay. So I mean, there are digital things, and we'll leave it here because we'll go on.
Yeah,
about this.
I know.
But like
I could go on
NFTs and things.
forever.
I appreciate like NFTs
All
and
right,
stuff
throw
like
out
that.
another one.
But yeah, I'm with you, Alec. Pineapple on pizza.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's
what?
delicious.
Oh, Alec, I thought we were.
We might need to end the episode right here.
Oh gosh.
Just like cut.
Well, it's not my fault that y'all are wrong. I mean,
It just doesn't go there.
What are you talking
it's
about?
So bad.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
No,
it is.
no,
It's
no,
really
no.
nasty.
This is like when there was like back in the 80s, you'd have the Chef Boyardee, like mom would make the nasty crust and like find what's in the refrigerator and toss it on the pizza. I don't know. Sorry, Mom. I shouldn't have thrown my mother under the bus. But,
that's because
it seems like a leftover thing that you throw on a pizza.
No,
Like you're looking through the fridge and you're like, yeah, we got some old black olives in here.
See,
and,
but
it's
look
not.
at this pineapple wedges.
This is why both of you are wrong. It's because pineapple on a pizza is like tomato and lettuce on a sandwich. Okay, it's the right kind of cool, refreshing taste and feel in your mouth that you need at that
So
time.
let me
Not sold.
So
No.
first and foremost, when pineapple gets put on a pizza, when
Yeah.
it gets put into an oven, it's no longer cold, and that's part of the issue.
Oh no, but it's still still juicy.
But
it
then
still cools your mouth down.
Then two, I don't like tomatoes in sandwiches, so
Oh.
you missed me all the way.
So you're wrong on both counts.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
I like tomatoes in certain.
I'll sit right in the
certain
middle of the
contexts.
two of you.
Yeah,
How about
no,
that?
I don't like a tomato on it. So you missed me with your whole.
But you know what,
explanation.
Micah? Again, unlike Ben, at least you're consistent, and
there
I
we go.
respect
I
that.
appreciate that.
I am
Mr.
full of
Wishy-Washy over here.
inconsistencies.
Exactly.
All right, so here's another one. Ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree.
Yeah.
Star Wars Episode 2.
Oh, that's very specific.
It is. Is this the Attack of the Clones?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just.
Where Anakin and
I know.
Amidala fall in love.
Yeah. Right. I'm gonna say, right for the picking.
I figured. You're a millennial.
No, because this is not. It's not necessarily a good thing for the Star Wars series. I think it's very consistent with Star Wars. Okay, so
you think Episode 2 is consistent with Star Wars?
Yeah, because that's when you see Anakin become.
That's even worse than pineapple on pizza.
No, it's because this is when Anakin. See, he's okay in the first one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then he gets all whiny in the second one.
Okay, so you said it was ripe for picking, though.
Yeah, that's right.
That means you like it.
No, I think it fits with the Star Wars story because the entire Skywalker family is whiny all the way through the series.
Well, this is... See, okay, let me...
I'm going to just have
Do you only like Episode 4 through 6?
No, I like Episode 1. And Episode 3
You like Episode
decent.
1?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Episode 2 is just, it's the worst of the 9 episodes, for sure.
Phantom, let me walk back, because I don't mind Phantom Menace. I just despise Jar Jar Binks. I don't get it.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible.
It didn't work out. It was a bad decision, but it doesn't ruin the movie for me. The love scenes with Anakin Amidala are just so central to Episode 2, and they are so...
I see.
Bad.
Right. See, the missed opportunity they have in that prequel series is they shouldn't have made it about Anakin. They should have made it about Palpatine.
Oh.
Because the entire way through, you see what Palpatine is doing, playing both sides.
Interesting.
Right. And they don't focus enough on that. And if they focus more on that, then you'd have a much better series.
All right, guys, fund us, and we'll remake the whole series. I'll do character decisions, you do the plot, and you just be the director and keep us in check. Because, I mean, personally, I actually...
dialogue.
I said you like Episode 1 that way. I like them all. I'm not going to lie. I like 1 through 9. I think they're all pretty good. I really like the last...
Yeah, that's right.
The last three were so... I thought they were really good.
See, I like the last 3, too.
They
I don't know what
solid.
everyone's problem is.
I like the last 3, too.
Okay.
I'm with you on that.
She pulls that spaceship out of the sky like that. Like,
so sick.
The
you
only
knew
bad
Palpatine,
part that was at the kind of Episode 2 level in the last 3 episodes is where Princess Leia is like doing her power move through space. That was one of the worst episodes or worst moves in filmmaking history. It didn't. I know what they were trying to do, and they were trying to honor her and all this stuff. It was bad.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was really bad.
The plot though for 8 was also just kind of weird. It was kind of pointless.
It was all over the
pointless.
place. It could have anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Right for the picking. Leave it on the tree. Leather sandals.
I'm from Florida.
That's why I asked.
Oh, right for the picking.
Okay.
What do you?
Well, you know,
got a question.
How often do you keep how long do you keep your leather sandals? Because I think that if you wear leather sandals, that's the question. Yeah.
Oh, I don't. We would wear them till we wore them out. We'd wear them out.
Oh man.
That's how we wore them. I mean, I don't wear them a lot anymore because I don't even think I own leather sandals. Because I moved to the Midwest, and it gets cold here, and then I moved out of the Midwest into another place that gets cold, and
it gets pretty hot here too.
No, I know you people. I know. Y'all complain about this. It gets all hot.
We have the
humid.
best though. We have a really nice spring. We have a hot summer, but then we have a really nice fall, and winter is fairly mild. I think St. Louis weather is decent. Other than allergies, but leather sandals. Yeah, one time we were on our way to church, and one of my kids had on leather sandals, and we thought that something had died in the van.
Feet.
We had to turn. I think he didn't go to church that Sunday because his feet smelled so bad.
Well, no one was there to wash them.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's the problem.
So, like on a tropical holiday, wearing like a linen outfit, leather sandals, it feels like it goes, but the sweat factor for me. So I'm such a sensory person, and just the thought of the sweat that would collect in those bad boys.
Yeah, you got to wash that out.
But what do you think? All right, so in Florida, okay, growing up, you put on like a suit or something. What do you think's happening? I mean, if you're gonna talk about like a holiday,
you can take it to the dry cleaners, but you can't take leather sandals to the dry cleaner.
Leather shoes after wearing them for one day in Florida.
Yeah,
they smell.
Okay,
it's bad. It's not good.
Fair.
Yeah, that's true.
I've only ever visited, never lived there, so you guys know better than me.
Oh yeah, that's right. Another Floridian.
Partial
Floridian.
I had
part-time Floridian.
I had a few years there.
That's
I
right.
I couldn't handle the heat.
Oh,
too much.
Beautiful. Oh,
too much for me.
It's so hot and so humid. It's wonderful.
Oof.
I don't mind it.
At least it's not as dry as St. Louis. That's
Again, times of the year. Right now. Anyway.
Yeah. We'll get past.
We'll get to the. You know what I'm excited about this fall, and then I'll let you do your last pick.
Oh man!
But it hasn't been that wet so far, leading into the fall. So we should have some really good colors, and the leaves should stay up for quite a while. I've said that, and now it's going to rain for like 3 weeks. But that's my hope. Anyway.
Ooh, all right.
I feel like I'm failing this, by the way. I think I am, but that's okay.
That's all subjective.
All right. So another one that's really, really specific. Ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree. M&M, and not the candy.
That was like the rapper.
The rapper?
The rapper.
I mean, I guess I listened to Eminem when I was in like middle school.
It always has a way of coming back at me.
That hurt. Oof. When Ben was discovering him in college.
Seminary.
I tried.
I mean, it was 2003 when Eminem came out with the
2003 is like Marshall Mathers LP, right?
No, it was after that. It was the one with like a curtain.
Curtain Call.
Curtain Call. That was the one. That came out, I think, in 2003, right before the Iraq War.
It was summer 2002. I remember because it was summer 2002 because we went on a short-term mission trip to Colorado, and there was a kid obsessed with Curtain Call the whole way.
You're right.
Anyway.
I listened to it while I was in Oberurzel riding on the subway. I remember that.
Wow, and it was new then.
Yeah.
Huh? Wow.
Yeah. Well,
wow. There's a lot going on in the world. Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
Eminem's good. I mean, if you listen to hip hop, I'm not advocating or not advocating for hip hop. If that double negative worked out,
I mean, for sure.
But
I would not recommend using his lyrics in like a Sunday school program or like quoting him in a sermon. Although I did that one time.
Did you?
Okay.
I used a little Eminem lyric in a sermon here at the seminary chapel. So
wow.
I'll let the listeners figure out what sermon that was. But most of his language is not good. But, and
that's putting it lightly.
He is. I think he was at the time very tuned into the debates that were going on in politics, and that's what I found interesting was he was trying to have a conversation with society about a variety of things that were going on. And I didn't always agree with everything that he said, or maybe even most of his takes, but I found him to be somebody that I could listen to, and he would help me to think about what our society was thinking about.
He's always played that role for me, because I do appreciate the social commentary types. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would say, to me, the comics are like the especially observational comics are like the exegetes of the world.
Yeah.
So I'm a big Jerry Seinfeld fan.
Yep.
Okay.
So I mean, he looks around and he sees things that other people don't see. And people say, oh, well, it's funny because it's true. It's like, no, there's more to it. It's funny because it's true and no one else saw it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's what makes it funny.
And that's what makes it funny. And that's what I think, kind of taking some of this stuff, full circle is that's what's so, if I like to this, if you were to take the biblical text and you put it in front of Jerry Seinfeld or a Jerry Seinfeld type, an observational comic, what would they see? Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways that's kind of what exegesis is sometimes. It's like, what's the deal with this, right? And again, I think this is why people want to dive into the biblical text because it is interesting, it is fascinating. What is the deal with that, right?
Yeah.
So I do appreciate the Marshall Mathers social commentary. That's
important to know what society is saying,
that's
even
right.
for the church.
Yeah,
because we talked about engaging these conversations.
All right.
Last, right for the picking.
Yeah.
Leave it on the tree. And I thought this was going to hit. I imagine that we were the same age, but now I'm starting to think I might be a couple years older than you, Alec.
I think you are, Micah.
All right, well, fine.
Based on my comment of Eminem in
middle school,
maybe even elementary school.
Oof.
But okay, well, don't be hurtful. 80s power ballads.
Oh, big fan.
All right, good.
Big fan.
Okay.
See, I'm a big Billy Joel fan.
Okay.
So I know it's not exactly the same thing there, but
same era.
Yeah, I appreciate. I'm a big Billy Joel fan, even into the 80s, right? Which I know people like his earlier stuff, but yeah, no, I take it. Yeah, absolutely. Now, the 80s didn't have the best of things to offer.
Not
I will
completely.
say that. So you can take, you can keep the denim, right? But
I thought you were going to say you guys.
I was going to say denim.
Weren't you both born in the 80s?
I was going to say the 80s were
Yeah,
pretty remarkable
77.
decade, if you ask me.
at the end, I was still alive when the Berlin Wall was up.
There
So
you go.
I'm a Cold War kid, just like
we go.
everyone else here. Yeah,
So I was 5 when they first in '89, and I remember my mom, for some reason, it was just the two of us were at home, and she like said, "Come here and watch the news," and I was like, "What?" And I'm like watching the news with her. I'm like, "Mom, what is the point of this?" And she's trying to explain to a 5-year-old. I'm like, "Can I play now?"
yeah, that's right.
But I just remember her making me watch like that first
Yeah.
wrecking ball go through the wall. And then me and Dorothy went to D.C. not too long ago in a subjective world. It was a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then they had this museum called the Newseum, and they had 4 panels from the Berlin Wall. I just remember looking at it. It's so remarkable. Yeah. It's just things like that you don't really grasp when they're happening.
Yeah.
But then later in life, you recall that stuff.
There's still a section of it up. Did you go to see it when you were? We
Yeah, I
walked
did
all
see
around
some of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked because I was recently watching. We during the youth gathering, we went and watched Love and Thunder as a team.
Yeah.
But me and Dorothy watched it again the other night, and Enya came on. Who Can Say? And it just the nostalgia. I just had to like put in like 80s ballads into Apple Music, and I was just jamming out to some. I'm a product of my generation.
Right.
Whenever somebody likes only one particular genre of music, you're missing out.
Yes.
I love 80s power ballads.
Yes.
They're just so good.
It's been super good to have you on the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
I'm really, really proud of the graduates that come out of Concordia Seminary. They take the Bible seriously. They know how to preach Christ to the world, and they're engaged with what's going on in the world. And you're just a fantastic example of that. So thank you for your ministry.
Very kind of you to say. I think that my time here, doing my MDiv here and then doing an STM here, was incredibly formative for me, and it was an experience I wouldn't trade for anything.
If you had one piece of advice for anybody considering church work as a profession, what would it be?
One piece of advice: continue considering it. Open up your Bible. Start reading your Bible, right? And when you're done, read it again and again and again. And put yourself into situations that might give rise to God using you in different ways. And you might not, you might be surprised at what comes of that. At least that was my experience.
Sure.
That's fantastic.
Well, everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Under the Fig Tree. If you're a first-time listener, thank you for joining us. If you're listening to us on whatever platform you listen to podcasts, just a friendly reminder that you can now also see us on Concordia Seminary's YouTube page. Eventually, as more and more of these episodes come out, we might have our own special playlist on the Concordia Seminary page, which means Concordia Seminary St. Louis's YouTube page. And then subscribe, turn on bell notifications. We got to get used to doing all this. But also, if you or somebody you know who you think might be a good church worker, first and foremost, tell them you think they should be a church worker. But also, please share Under the Fig Tree with them. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.